Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is elbows up. Elbows up. And I was writing about an experience that happened when my son was in the first grade. I dropped him off as I always did in the morning, and I was going about my business trying to decide which way to tell you the story. The first recess of the day for my son in first grade was at 9:45 a.m. And he fell off the monkey bars at that recess and hurt his elbow. And he went to the nurse's office, and there was a scrape on his elbow, and she cleaned the scrape with alcohol. It was pretty significant scrape, and used antibiotic ointment and covered it with a bandage and had him bend and straighten his arm a few times, which he later showed me, like when she had him do that, he had to hold his breath because it hurt so much. And he was crying. When he fell off the monkey bars, a teacher saw it happen, and sent him. Anyway, she sent him back to class. She said, "You're okay, head back to class." So he went back to class, and about an hour later, he went to his teacher, and he said, "It's really hurting." And she was lovely. I loved his first grade teacher. It was her first year teaching. She loved the kid. She loved teaching. She was incredibly enthusiastic. I volunteered in the classroom 3 days a week, so I knew his schedule. Anyway, she said to him, "Okay, well, the nurse looked at it, so we know it's okay. Why don't you just do your best? Maybe try writing with your left hand for a little while." So he went back to his desk, and then it was time for phys ed. So now we're like 3 hours later. He changes carefully for phys ed. He was telling me, like, even just trying to put his arm over his head to get his shirt on and off was painful. And they go out to the field, and the coach tells him to run laps, and he starts trying to run laps with a couple of his little buddies, and he collapsed halfway around the track. And the coach went running over, takes a look at his elbow, and says, "Go to the nurse's office right away." Goes to the nurse's office, and this is when I get a phone call. And I'm with my daughter, who's 2.5 at the time. I'm home. I've just given her lunch. Phone rings. And, any parent will tell you when your phone rings and you're not expecting it, you see your child's school number, it's never a good sign, right? So I pick up the phone, and the nurse is very factual. She says, your son fell off the monkey bars. His elbow's probably broken. You should come. Not warm, just very, factual. That's fine. Sometimes, that's the best way to get that kind of information. I have my daughter on my hip, my bag over my shoulder. I'm out the door, and before we even say goodbye, right? In the car, I'm driving over. School is very close, less than a minute away. And I'm realizing as I'm driving, recess was 3 hours ago. If he fell off the monkey bars at recess, he has been in pain for 3 hours. So I'm devastated and cannot get to him fast enough. And, my daughter is like, Dylan's hurt, like Dylan's elbow, like Dylan's crying, like she's asking me, she's worried. And I'm telling her, I don't know, honey, like his elbow, I think maybe his elbow's broken. I don't know if he's crying. We're going to go find out right now. go running with her, obviously through the gate into the main office, and the nurse's office was off of the main office. And I go running in there and I see the scene, how your mind is processing things. I see my son first, which is really all I'm looking to see. And he is pale. His eyes are huge. His pupils are dilated. He's definitely in shock. And next to him is the principal. And that really surprised me. I remember that just being, when you see a picture and it's like what in this picture, what's wrong in this picture? Like what doesn't match or what doesn't make sense? It's like, it just stuck out because I could never get time. Nobody could get time with her. She was not an approachable, engaged kind of principal in that way. And I had been at the school at that point. We'd been at the school for 2 years. He'd been in kindergarten there. I'd been volunteering in the kindergarten classroom. We had had a lice breakout in kindergarten that went on and on. And I am, for anyone who knows me, like very extremely, maybe a little bit, hint of OCD clean. Like I don't want, so I was like stripping my kid before he would come into the house it went on and on. Finally, a bunch of moms, we just volunteered to stand there and do head checks. We took the dress up clothes to get them professionally cleaned. We paid to have the rug shampooed. Like we had to do it because she was not helping in any way. And I would go to her to say like, hey, I've got a fundraising idea, a little bit outside the box because the same old tired fundraising wasn't really working. Wouldn't make time for that. Just when you're in a public school, fundraising is everything. You want engagement from the parents. You want people to be volunteering and like trying to figure out, how to have that community, not just engagement, but that net of people who are like, great, what can we do to make things as wonderful as possible for all the kids? And she just wasn't having those conversations. I remember funding got cut for like the science labs, and we didn't find out till it was already done, things like that. Okay. So here she is suddenly sitting in the office, and there's my son, just in shock. And I go right over to him, put my daughter down, and his elbow is the size of like a small grapefruit. I knew instantly it was broken. And, I said to him, oh, honey, like that must really hurt. And he had like tears sliding out of his eyes. And I picked him up carefully and I said, we're going to get you fixed up. But internally, I'm thinking like, okay, neither one of my kids ever had a broken bone before. So I'm like thinking, do I take him to the pediatrician first to then go like to the ER because the building was connected, or do I go right to the ER? Just trying to like run those problem solving in my head. Meanwhile, now I'm holding a 6-year-old, I've got his bag, my 2.5-year-old, and I'm trying to get out the door and back into the car. And the principal is like chattering away in this sing-songy voice. She's saying things like, sometimes these things just don't present as that bad when they're, when it first happens. And the nurse asked him about his pain level when he came in this morning. Like, and she's following me like through the office and out the door. And I'm struggling with all this stuff and, trying to hold my daughter's hand and carry. And it's going on. And I finally realized she thinks I'm going to sue. Like if I finally realized what was going on and why she was sitting with him and why she was, and I turned to her and I said, listen, I am not litigious. I am not going to sue. Please help me pick up my daughter, grab the bag, help me get into the car. He's in pain. That is what I need. Help me, please. So she stopped talking, picked up my daughter, took the bag, like helped me get to the car. I strapped my son into the car seat. I strapped my daughter into her car seat, put his bag in the back seat. I thanked her and went off I called the pediatrician, who was my beloved Dr. Melphus, told him what was going on. He said, go right to the ER, call me, let me know what happens. And that's what I did. Get to the ER and just spent the next several hours making sure my son, was getting the love and affection and care from me. Obviously, there's nothing worse than knowing in retrospect, like that your child was in pain and no one even called you. It's a terrible feeling that the people you entrusted with the care of your child failed you and him. And I knew it was not intentional. I understood the nurse made a mistake, right? Like he went in and it probably didn't look that bad to her. The thought of her making him bend and straighten his arm, like those monkey bars, like those things they're treacherous, And when I think about the things that we grew up with, like, it's even crazier. But, I would have thought that most school nurses would not have kids bend and straighten an arm if they've fallen off a climbing structure like that, because you don't have x-ray vision and you don't know. But whatever, I knew in my heart, like I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt that she made a mistake. She made a bad judgment call. I didn't think she intentionally, but I'll tell you what happened. So he gets a cast on his arm. It was a bad break. He gets a cast on his arm. And by the end of the day, we're like, we're back home. He's excited because it's a novelty. He's got a cast. My daughter like drew on it. We end the day like we ended all the days back then. We were like cuddled up in my bed, reading a book. I think we all passed out very quickly. And that was that. I fully 100% expected the principal and the nurse to call the next day and check on him. Just ask, like, how's he doing? Was it broken? Are you all okay? So sorry. Anything, even if the word sorry hadn't happened, like, just how is he doing? Are you all right? That call did not come, not from the principal, not from the nurse. No one from the school called to check on him. And that's the part that really, I just could not believe it. Our pediatrician called. He didn't even see my son. He just got that call from me and called, of course, to check in the morning. How's he doing? How are you? Are you okay? Like he was a caring, loving, wonderful human being. And I realized the school is not calling because they are worried. If they call, that is a sign of culpability. This principal is still worrying about liability and culpability, and that's where they're at. They're not calling to check on him because they don't want any trail of any sort of evidence that they failed, and they fully failed. There's no argument, but I wasn't looking for anything other than some compassion and kindness that you would expect when you're a member of a community, certainly a school, right? An elementary school with children where you're volunteering and you're pitching in. Certainly I expected that at the very least. So it didn't happen. So we go back to school, I think the next day. I think he didn't go to school the day after that happened, but I think maybe the following day he did. And still, like when I passed her, fake smile, wave, nothing. No, like he's got a big red cast on his arm. Nothing like, hey buddy, how you doing? How's the arm? Nothing. No acknowledgement. So at that point, I went to the district office and filed for an intra-district transfer. So when you're in the public school system, you have to go to the public school that's closest to you. That's how it works, unless there's a compelling reason for you to transfer. So when I went to the district office, I explained what had happened. I said, my son fell at the morning recess. I was not called for 3 hours. His elbow is broken, and I still have not been called. I want to transfer. And I think the district was worried I was going to sue for negligence. And they were like, where do you want to go? Like, no problem. Where do you want to go? Do you want to transfer now? Do you want to wait for the beginning of second grade? I could have gone anywhere. And so I went to a different public school in our neighborhood, not far, and that had a great little reputation. And I had him start at the beginning of second grade because I loved his first grade teacher, and I trusted that, nothing like that was going to happen for the rest of the year. And I didn't want to pull him out, mid-year like that, or the beginning of the year like that. I didn't want to pull him out and away from all of his friends that way. But we moved at the beginning of second grade, and my daughter was grandfathered into that school. That's how that works, if you have a sibling in the school. So and that first school ended up being shuttered like a number of years later. I don't remember, it was like 3, 5, something like that. But that inclination to worry about yourself to such a degree that you lose your humanity is really what I was writing about this week. This institution that kind of clamped down and decided, because I know the principal and the nurse had a conversation. I am sure there was a conversation about don't reach out, don't call. Because it was just there's no way that's not what you do as a human being. And the fact that no one did that, there were certainly conversations that happened. And the fact that the principal was sitting there in the first place when you could never even get 2 seconds of her time, clearly she knew. If I had been a different kind of person, but I would never do that. For me, it's like the public school system is such a gift. And in Southern California, where I am, we have a beautiful public school system. I would never sue. Unless something like so egregious happened that I felt like this is what I have to do in order to make sure this never, ever, I wouldn't do that. The teachers are not making enough money. I would never drain resources that way, ever. I have spent, my kids have been in the public school system from the beginning, except for preschool. And I have done anything and everything I could to contribute and to participate and to volunteer, and to support. And so just to have that mindset of we're not going to call and check on this child because then we might get ourselves in trouble. We might look like we were liable for damages or we're admitting culpability. That is so wrong. And I think the level of self-interest at that point, when people are in a mindset like that of looking out for number one, worrying about the bottom line, worrying about their own liability to the extent that they've now sacrificed their own humanity, it's like forget your well-being. If that's what you're worried about, if self-interest is what's motivating you, you have already lost. You've already lost, because I would offer, I don't think it's possible to be well and that self motivated simultaneously. I do not think that you can sacrifice your own humanity and your own compassion and also be well. I don't think those two things can exist at once. So, you've already lost any hope of having your like well-being intact. If you're talking about your financial situation, or like not leaving yourself open for that kind of thing, like if that's what you're prioritizing, I also think you have lost the thread, because you're not taking any of that stuff with you. If that is what you have decided to make your number one focus, is your financial health and not your emotional, mental, health and wellness. I'm not saying we all need to be able to keep a roof over our heads and all that. But when your morals and your ethics have gone out the window because you are so concerned about your bottom line, you have lost it. You've lost it. And that's what we're seeing everywhere. That is what we're seeing all over the place, is people, thankfully, it's not everyone. It's just far too many people are so concerned about that, about their me, mine, am I okay? Like, they're not, they've lost it. We are, wired for connection and compassion. I mean, we have mirror neurons, and they're literally like, if you are ever watching a movie and you're like relating to the protagonist, right? And they're going through something, a heartbreak or a loss, and you start crying. Those are your mirror neurons. You're watching something happen to someone else, and you are able to understand what that feels like. It's as if you're going through it. That's in us. We're wired for this stuff, to understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. People who, they've studied this stuff, people who are like sociopaths, and I'm not saying that in a nasty way. I'm saying there are people that have genuine, personality disorders, mental health disorders. Like there are people who have very serious, those neurons are not firing for them at the same level. Sometimes they're not firing at all. And it's really interesting. People who have ADHD, sometimes their neurons are firing more. Their mirror neurons, or that area of the brain, lights up even more. So it's really interesting. Brain, like what's happening in the brain is very interesting. It's a little bit of a tangent. But the point is, like, we are wired for story for so many generations. That's how we learned things around the campfire. One generation to the next telling stories, that it is so sad when people have lost their humanity and are only thinking about what's good for me and what do I want. And a number of years ago, I can't remember like when anymore, but I think I was writing, and I just had this thought that like there's really no such thing as other people's children, that anytime you see a child in the world, right, that's your responsibility. It's like children, like my own children that I grew inside my body and, pushed out into this world, right? They don't belong to me. They belong to themselves. They belong to the world. We all belong to each other. And I would hope if my children were out in the world and something happened, that there would be someone there who would do for them what I would do if I was there. Like, I don't know, a few months ago, I think now, I just happened to be there when this kid got hit. He was on a bike, he got hit by a car. I wrote about it, He's right between my son and my daughter in age. And it turned out he was in shock, as you would be when you get hit by a car and you're on a bike. I stayed with him. He called his mom, had her on speaker, and it turned out she was in another state. So I stayed with him until the ambulance came. I took down the information. I did all the things I would hope someone else would do if something like that happened to one of my kids and I was in another state. And I don't want to meddle. Like, that's just normal. This is not a thing where I should be like, oh, that's so, no, that's normal behavior of a normal human being with a normal level of compassion. That's what you do. And I said to her, if you don't have a friend who can meet him at the hospital, I will go. If he was alone for the weekend, because he's 17, he's a 17-year-old kid, she was going to be gone. I was like, he can stay with us. Like, my son's in college. I have an empty room. He can come and stay, and I meant it. Because that's just normal. That shouldn't be a big deal. And I really am starting to worry for people if this is not obvious and evident. I have a neighbor across the street. He is elderly. He lives alone. If you have people like that on your block, I mean, of course you want to check. Are you okay? Like, he used to ride his bike. He is not a young man. He used to ride his bike to the grocery store. He was not able, he had a car. He still has the car. It's parked in his driveway all the time. He can't drive anymore. I think his license was taken away. He can't really see. He's hobbling around with a cane. He didn't always have the cane. What happened to him is he was riding his bike. He used to take it to the grocery store and put his groceries in a basket and come back. He was a very active, older gentleman. He used to do Tai Chi on the street in the early morning. I've lived across the street from this man for 20 years, so I know, And he got hit by a car on his bike coming back from the grocery store one day. This was probably, 6 years ago. And that was it. He has not really recovered since then. And he's older. So there's no more biking to the grocery store. So I take him to the grocery store, or I get groceries for him when he's not up for going anymore. He's slowing down. That's not a big deal. It's not. This is what it is to be in community with people, is just to be looking and hopefully caring, especially now when we have a situation where the safety net is really in jeopardy. What little safety net we had. We did not have enough of a safety net here, in my opinion. We can talk about this all day long, and this is a political thing now. This is a political, philosophical conversation of, what do you think the world should look like? That's what your politics are. That's what it is when you're voting. You're voting for, what do you think the world should look like? How do you think people should be treated? Where do you think your tax dollars should be spent, and on what, right? And there's your state tax dollars and your federal tax dollars. So when you pay your federal tax dollars, that's the country, and hopefully you are voting and you are sending people to Washington to represent what you want, what you think should happen with that money. That's we the people. That's our money. The government doesn't just have its own money, okay? The budget they have, the money they have, that's from the people, from all the taxes. So we're all putting in. That's how it works. Just like in a public school, that's paid for with tax money. And then you really hope that you're going to be in a school where everyone in the community is pitching in whatever they can. And that's how things work well, when everybody pitches in whatever it is they can, whatever it is they can. And the people who have more, hopefully they pitch in more, whether that is more money that they have or more time, or they have different gifts, whatever they might be. Like, when my kids were little, I used to do field trips to my yoga studio all the time. Bring everybody, whether they're in my kids' classrooms or not, just come on over. I'll teach the kids yoga. Why not? Like, yes, chaperoning, whatever I could do, I did. That's the idea. And that's when things work well. And there are people who feel, no, the government should be small. And, small government is as small as possible. I don't want my tax dollars spent helping kids get free lunches at school. Okay. I don't understand that, but, listen, anyone can feel however they want to feel. Anyone can feel any way they want to feel about anything. That's just not my philosophy. I feel like my tax dollars, I'm very happy to have some amount of my tax dollars going to help if there's a family struggling, they're living on the edge. It is hard now, okay? It is hard in this world. We have gone further and further away from, making it manageable for people to work really hard and be able to keep a roof over their heads. It's not easy. So I'm very happy for some of my tax dollars to go toward helping people who are barely able to survive. I have no problem with that. You may feel differently, whatever. So hopefully you're participating in this democracy that we used to have. Unfortunately, what's happening now is, as I've been writing about for months, Congress, what is supposed to happen, Congress is made up of all these representatives that all of us are voting for from all over the country, right? They go to Washington and they're supposed to represent the needs of their constituents, the people in all these different places all over the country. They go and they meet and they work together. That's how it's supposed to work. And they compromise. Sometimes they scratch each other's backs, whatever. They compromise, they do their deals, they have committees. They talk about things. My people need this. Your people need that. In our state, we need this. Some states contribute more federal dollars than other states. And so all of that money goes into this pot, and they decide together what programs, what projects they're going to fund in what different states, what global initiatives the United States is going to take, all of that. They decide together. They sign off on it. Boom. Congress controls the purse strings. That means Congress together decides what's happening with everybody's tax money. And that's fair. That way, no matter what party's in office, the money is being spent in a way that represents we the people. Okay? That's not happening. Not with this administration. And you got to know that. They've been appropriating, Congress appropriates funds. It is illegal for any administration to impound the funds that Congress has appropriated. Impounding funds, it's unconstitutional, means Congress decided, okay, together, this is what we're going to spend money on. And then the administration says, no, we're going to pull that money back and spend it on something else. That's unconstitutional. The executive branch does not get to decide because it's not their money. It's everybody's money. And those decisions are made with everybody's representatives, not just the people who won the election. I don't know. I don't know how to explain this any better. So that's been going on for months now. That's why people are upset, And now we have a shutdown. And the shutdown, has been explaining like what the shutdown is essentially about is you have the party in power, Republicans, right? They're controlling the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. The Supreme Court, in a wild, unbelievable decision, gave the president immunity for anything he does in his quote unquote official capacity, which is like, I don't know what to say. We've never, ever had anything like that. That's like monarch style. And, what we're experiencing here in this country right now, and part of what I was writing about, is we've got blue cities and states that are being invaded by ICE agents and the National Guard because this president is calling like places like Portland a war zone. Memphis, he was after Memphis, Chicago, Los Angeles. We experienced this. I wrote about it. I went to downtown LA. I took videos so everyone could see. We were talking about a 6-block radius around the detention center in Los Angeles, right? In downtown Los Angeles. We did not need the National Guard. The LAPD had it. So it was beyond, I can't even describe 6 blocks. 6 blocks. And the protests, again, I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it is so offensive. But if you have any doubt, you can go back and look at my essay called I Know What the Riot Is. Because it is a riot, like in the ha-ha way, okay? I live here. No one wants their city to be on fire. We had our city on fire for real with the wildfires. And this administration had no compassion, none, when we actually were on fire. People were saying the most unbelievably callous things online. His supporters, people who support this administration, were saying the most callous, nasty things while we were actually on fire here because of the wildfires. There were people saying things like, yeah, well, serves you right. Y'all will just buy a new mansion next week. Boo-hoo. Okay? Not all of us are millionaires and billionaires out here. I hate to tell you. I don't even know how I'm going to afford health insurance in January if they don't extend these Affordable Care Act subsidies. So, I really, and then we have these ICE agents come in and start grabbing people. Here's this president talking the whole election cycle about, I don't know anything about Project 2025. It has nothing to do with me, until a week ago when suddenly he's very happy to let you know he knows exactly what it is and he's working with Russell Vogt, but whatever. Come in to our cities and start grabbing people. He said, oh, we're going to go after the worst of the worst, the gang members. And instead it's people's grandmothers who are like, selling fruit on the corner. It's people's like breastfeeding mothers, right? Being pulled out of their legal immigration appointments. It's dads. I don't know if you saw like 2 weeks ago, this family went for their legal immigration appointment two kids and the mom and dad, and they pull the dad away. And then this ICE agent throws the mother onto the ground in front of these poor, traumatized kids because she got upset that her husband is being pulled away and deported. You know, it's like, this is not the worst of the worst. Chicago, they're like filming these raids, a helicopter, and these guys, you know, rappelling out of a helicopter, breaking down doors, pulling kids out of their beds in the middle of the night. Some of them are in diapers. Some of them aren't even dressed, zip tying them together, putting them in the back of U-Hauls and budget vans for hours, separated from their mothers. Like, come on now, y'all, come on. And Portland, they're in like blow up frog outfits and chicken outfits, you know, and the president's like, Portland's on fire. And, you know, Kristi Noem, they're saying like, oh, it's terrible. It's, you know, terrorist organization. It's Portland. Have you ever been to Portland? It's literally like they're having like a naked bike ride this weekend. It is not on fire. There are people living in Portland posting videos live from Portland so people can see. And I know what they're doing because I did it when they were lying about Los Angeles and saying Los Angeles is on fire. You know, Los Angeles was not on fire. People were protesting because their neighbors are being denied due process. These guys show up, they're like masked, they don't identify themselves. They throw people into the back of unmarked vans. You don't know where they're going or what's happening to them. That is not how things are supposed to go in this country. And this is not the worst of the worst. These are not, you know, hardened criminals. These are people's mothers, you know, just going to pick them up from school, being grabbed in the school line, in the pickup line. It's just like, so yeah, then people protest, as they should, because they care. And then that's called an insurrection. And these ICE agents are like firing pepper bullets at the heads of ministers and shooting pepper spray into the faces of protesters who are exercising their First Amendment rights. You know, this is not, no one should be okay with this. I don't care who you voted for. That's the part that is really disappointing to someone like me, is where are the Republicans saying this is not okay? Because I can promise you, you know, if this were a reverse situation and there was a Democrat in office behaving this way, there is no way I would be like, oh, too bad, you lost. So now you're losing all your constitutional rights. You know, I'm just going to like turn a blind eye. Sorry. Like, that is so unbelievable to me. And so, it's shocking to me and sad. And you cannot say you love this country if you don't care that the Constitution's being violated by the person that you voted for. Like, that doesn't work like that. You know, the president is not just the president of the people who voted for him. That's not how it works. The president's supposed to be the president of the entire country because we all pay taxes. There's no taxation without representation. So it's exhausting to be, you know, to be me and people like me. It's really tiring. It's not about party. It's not even about that. It's just about like, wow, my country people don't care about me or democracy or the Constitution or ethics or compassion. They're not going to say anything when kids in Chicago are zip tied and thrown into the back of a U-Haul. They're not going to say anything when grandmas are like treated like hardened criminals and mothers, and they're not going to say anything. They're just going to, well, you should have come the right way. That's the response. What is going on with you is my question. What is going on with you? It is, if you want to tell yourself, that's okay, I can't stop you. But it's like, that is just, I don't know what to say about it. And that's the same, it's the same thing as like a child is in your care. You're the principal of a school. You're the nurse of a school. He falls down on your watch. He breaks his elbow, and you don't call his mother for 3 hours, and then you don't call the next day to see how he is because you don't want to get sued. It's like you're sacrificing your ethics and your humanity because you're worrying about you. And you're sacrificing your ethics, democracy, the Constitution, I don't know, because you want what you want, I guess. But this is not, and all the people who don't, what's going to happen when the pendulum swings and it isn't your guy in power anymore? Is this how you want to be treated? When it's the other side in power, is this how you want to be treated? You want your constitutional rights violated, and your neighbors are just like, well, too bad. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like, this is not the way to do life. This is not the way to run a country. This is not the way to run a school. This is not the way to run a block with your neighbors on it. This is not the way to run your life. It's all the same stuff, is my point. That's why I shared the story about my son and his broken elbow. It's the same stuff. You're either, everyone gets to make their own choices about how they're going to live their lives. And you can be quiet while horrific things are happening. If that's what you want to do, you can turn a blind eye and be like, well, you're getting what you deserve or whatever. I don't think it's going to ultimately go well for you. I really don't. I don't think ultimately this is going to lead to a life that feels fulfilling and peaceful and good, in your heart and in your gut and in your, I don't. And I think when you have to do the mental gymnastics to convince yourself that these horrendous things that are happening are somehow okay, you're sacrificing, what somewhere in your person is really not okay. Nobody wants unsafe cities, okay? Nobody wants crime. Nobody wants murder. Nobody wants any of that. The people making cities unsafe right now, this administration, like these cities that they're going into, they're not war zones. Portland is not a war zone. Of all the cities to go into, Portland is kind of like hilarious to choose. They're the most granola, like matcha latte, patchouli oil, have a dance party in front of the ICE detention center city of all. I mean, the optics are just going to get like more and more ridiculous, and they are. Los Angeles, these blue cities and blue states, I mean, good luck, because people are not, the violence is being incited by these agents who are violating people's constitutional rights. That's what is happening. And it's really devastating to see so many people in this country not care about that. So I was writing about that. When I finished writing about my son, I was talking about all these other examples, and it's like, these people that are like, they're pro-life, but then they're seeking the death penalty for women who get abortions. South Carolina, that's what's going on right now. They want to they want to bring women up on homicide charges if they get abortions, even if they're getting them because, their lives are at stake, or they're the victims of assault, or something's happening at the end of they have an emergency and there is no other option. They're like debating when it would be okay. When maybe they wouldn't, they'd be able to like defend themselves in a murder trial. This is okay. So you're pro-life and sanctity of life, but you're also pro-capital punishment. You just get to a place where it's so exhausting. If you think abortion is murder, don't have an abortion. That's all. Don't have an abortion. Pro-choice is not pro-abortion. Like I was saying that in the essay. I don't know anyone who's like, oh, yeah, you know what? Like, I know what would be fun this Saturday. Let's have an abortion. Like, no one's pro-abortion. People are pro-choice. They're pro-letting women make decisions, trusting women to figure out with their doctors, with their families, what to do in incredibly painful circumstances. That's usually what is happening. And if you are if this is what you feel, that the government should be deciding what gets to happen, then let's mandate vasectomies for pro-life men. And then you don't have to worry about, unwanted pregnancies, abortions, or birth control. You don't have to worry about that anymore. If you are a pro-life man, just federally mandated vasectomies when you want to have a child, and, assuming you can find a woman who wants to do that with you, reverse it. There you go. No problem. Let's just do that. If that's how you feel, that the government should get to tell you what to do about this stuff, then let's do it for men. I am so tired of the hypocrisy here. If you think marriage is between a man and a woman, then marry a man or a woman. Why are you worried about what Sally Joe across the street is doing? That's her life. Your job is not to worry about Sally Joe, I promise you. Like, Sally Joe can worry about herself. Your job is to worry about your life and your soul. Nobody assigned you keeper of Sally Joe's soul. So I just let her deal with that. Why do you think you know what the right things are for people? I guarantee you everybody has enough work keeping their own side of the street clean. Everyone. I have not ever met a single person who is so spiritually evolved that they could start telling other people how to live. And no one knows what happens after this. I hate to tell you. You might think you know. You might have a belief system. It's a theory. You'll know when you exhale for the final time. Then you'll know. And a lot of the people who are so like, I'm Christian, these are the same people who are not saying a word about kids being zip-tied and thrown into the backs of U-Hauls. These are the same people who are okay with grandmas being deported with no due process. At the same time, a convicted sex offending child rapist pedophile is in a prison camp in Texas. you're okay with Ghislaine Maxwell being moved from a maximum security prison where she should be and where she would have been behind bars for 20 years and has now been moved to this, minimum security prison camp where convicted sex offenders are not even eligible to be because of this president. He allowed it. They got a waiver for her. You're okay with that. But abuelas, no, they're gonna be denied their due process and shipped out of here. If Jesus himself showed up, brown Jesus, you people would be deporting him, is what's going on. That's the way things are right now. You're not okay with kids getting a free lunch because you want tax breaks for billionaires, but you're Christian. It is the hypocrisy that, what kind of Christianity is that? Please tell me, what Bible are you looking at? I'd love to know. What Bible you're looking at that says, my compassion is for white kids only. Bring unto me all the little white children. Really? Bring unto me all the little documented children. I'll just feed them. the bread, and the loaves of bread and fishes are for documented children only. I don't think that's what Jesus said. Am I confused? Maybe one of you Christians can, correct me. Yeah. The lack of compassion and the level of rampant selfishness is going to kill us. That's the problem, honestly. This desire to tell other people how to live and what to do. You're in no position. I promise you. I promise you, you have enough on your plate to just manage your own self. We all do. I do. You do. All of us. To be telling somebody else what to do, how to live. Just ease up. Just seriously. But at the very least, if you see people being mistreated and harmed, and you're just going about your business la la la, I would say, it's really time to take a hard look at what is going on with you and where your priorities are, because you only get one life. And, you can do whatever you want. I mean, I can say what I'm saying and you can, disregard or whatever. You can have whatever feelings you want. But you don't have all the time in the world. There are people who, they'll never say they're sorry, that call that never came the next day. There are people like that in life. You might know some of them. Something happens and they will never get the words "I'm sorry" out of their mouths. And I was writing about this too. My mom was like that. And I miss my mother. I miss my mother so much. There's very little I would not give for just one more conversation, one more hour. I miss her every minute of the day. But I don't miss that aspect of dealing with her. She would not apologize. She would not ever admit she was wrong about anything. She wouldn't have hard conversations. She wouldn't be accountable. And it was exhausting and painful. And, people like that are really hard to love. It does not mean that you can't love them, but it's just really exhausting because you are constantly, there is no long-term close relationship where mistakes aren't going to be made. No one is going to get everything right all the time. That's just the nature of being a human being. sometimes you're tired, whatever. Sometimes there's like an issue that is really triggering and someone says something and bam, you say something you wish you hadn't said, or, whatever. Like, there's no such thing as a long-term relationship where there isn't going to be trouble sometimes, And if you cannot say, I'm sorry, you're going to have a really hard time. It's just not going to be easy for anyone to be close to you, and vice versa. Like, it's just really, and I have been in relationships like that with my mother and with other people. And you can do that thing in your mind where you're like, okay, I know this person just can't do it. They just can't admit that they blew it, So I know that about them. I'm just going to accept the apology they're not going to offer. I'm going to recognize that it is too uncomfortable for them to have this kind of conversation, and I'm just going to let it go. So now you've accepted an apology that wasn't offered. You've extended compassion to them because they are limited in this area, and you're moving along. But they've missed out. They've missed out on the opportunity to have a conversation with you where maybe you said that really hurt, and they got to see you feeling incredibly vulnerable and hurt and maybe crying. They missed out on the opportunity to say, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I love you. I didn't mean that. I said it in anger. I didn't mean it. Or, I said it. It's my own fear. It's my, whatever. They missed out on an opportunity to really be close to you. And they robbed both of you of an opportunity to go deeper and to understand each other more profoundly. That's what those instances offer. When something goes wrong or someone says something hurtful or something painful happens, as much as it stings in the moment, or there's an opportunity there to go deeper or not. And there are certain people that just refuse. And so it's like scar tissue builds up. You're not going to go deeper, and it's unfortunate. And there are a lot of people who are behaving in a way right now that is really painful. And when you try to say, can you not see even this budget bill that was presented, by the way, back in July, okay? You have the party in power, and they come along and they say, here's our budget bill. This is what we want to do with the money, the tax dollars of the American people. This is how we want to spend it. Nowhere in this budget, they gutted Medicaid. They took $1 trillion away from Medicaid. That is the biggest cut to Medicaid we've ever seen. SNAP benefits, CHIP benefits, those are benefits that help feed children of families who are on the edge. And it's all this conversation about, and they did not extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And they're saying it's low-income people that are, listen, I'm being affected. It's like my health insurance right now, my premium is $346.46 a month. And if the subsidies are not extended, my premium will be $1,700 a month, $1,706.59 as of January 1st. I can't do that. I have a kid in college. I have another one right behind. I can't do that. So, it's not just low-income people. It's millions of people, millions and millions of people. You likely know lots of people who are going to be severely impacted, and you may be one of them. The thing that's also so crazy is red states are going to be impacted by these cuts more than any other. I'm not sure when the supporters of this administration are going to start looking at their health insurance portals, but I hope it's soon, because they are going to be impacted even more than blue states. You know, people on Medicaid, people on Medicare, people getting their insurance through the Affordable Care Act, all of those people are going to have a very serious, very serious 114% increase is what's projected, and millions of people going off of insurance altogether. And, you know, just all of this misinformation and nasty, like, and I was like, you know, this whole thing about like all the government websites that are like the Democrat shutdown, whatever, the radical left Democrats have closed the government. No, they haven't. Okay. They signed a clean CR in March, even after they saw this nasty budget bill that took affordable healthcare options away from all Americans, not just Democrats, Republicans, independent, everybody, right? They still signed a clean CR in March and said, okay, we'll keep the government running here, hoping and assuming their Republican colleagues would negotiate with them in good faith and work to extend the subsidies, put some of that money back into Medicaid, like work with them, come up with something here for people so they wouldn't be left like. And Republicans knew the deadline when these subsidies were going to end was December 31st. They should have been working since March to say, okay, here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do. We'll extend the subsidies and we'll put X amount back into Medicaid or whatever. Work with your colleagues. That's how it's supposed to go. But they didn't. They didn't. And so now they're like, give us another clean CR. We want it again. Why? What you did last time after Democrats signed a clean CR is you impounded funds and spent the money however you wanted. You fired tons of federal employees, gutted federal agencies, told schools across the country, either get in line with this president's anti-DEI policies or lose your federal funding. Why would they do it again? There's no negotiation going on. The people who didn't vote for this, they're not being represented. They're being ignored. They're being told to go F themselves. They're being called radical left lunatics. That's taxation without representation. That's like exactly what this country was built to avoid. Maybe, like, I don't know, familiarize yourself with the Constitution of the United States or something, you know? Because why would anyone expect that Democrats would do it again? You know? And then the president posts these deep fake, unbelievably racist videos of Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero and Chuck Schumer in a voiceover that is so despicable, I can't even like repeat it. So I've never seen anything like this in my life, you know. Anyway, that's where we are. We have a lot of really unbelievable things happening in this country, and a president who very much wants to, you know, do you all know Antifa just means anti-fascist? It means against fascism, and there is no organization. There's no organization. Like, it's just a word. But he wants to use the Insurrection Act to turn our military against us. We're already seeing what it looks like. It's happening in the streets, in these blue cities. It's happening when you see ICE agents, you know, just attacking American citizens for exercising their constitutional rights of free speech and peaceful protest. They're not violent. They're just there protesting with signs, like in suits. It's just, if now the military is going to be turned against us, I don't know. I don't know what to say or what you need to see to realize what's happening. But that budget bill, all it did was give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and take money away from people who are desperate, like the most vulnerable in our country, safety net gone, and make it a lot harder for people in the middle, a lot harder. And it increased the budget for ICE billions. It's so more of what we're seeing. That's not what I want with my tax dollars. I don't want to help Jeffrey Bezos make more money, Mark Zuckerberg make more money. These guys want no regulation on anything they're doing. There was just a thing, about AI, right? And ChatGPT. And I know I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, but I don't think I highlighted it enough. Adam Rain, why don't you just go Google that? Young kid, Sophie Gettenberg, I think her name is. I don't want to get her last name wrong, but she's another teenager. They were using ChatGPT as a friend and text, like messaging back and forth. Why don't you just go look at that? It's very upsetting, but this is what happens when you don't regulate these billionaires. They don't care about us as human beings. They don't care. Children die. Meta, their standards for AI and what is okay for a child to be hearing, like if they're messaging back and forth. And if you're going to say, well, what is a kid doing with that anyway? Do you know how many teenagers are using ChatGPT for things? It's all over the place. It's everywhere. An 18-year-old even, a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old. We're not just talking, obviously, if an 8-year-old has ChatGPT, yeah, I'm going to say, what is your 8-year-old? Definitely everyone needs to be monitoring their children online. And I know 8-year-old needs to be, in my opinion, having a phone. That's my opinion. And that's not me. Maybe there are some exceptions. Maybe there's a situation where someone's working 3 jobs and this is the only way they can reach their kid. Or maybe it's a situation where somebody's so scared about school shootings, they just want their kid to have a phone in the bag so they can reach them. I'm not going to judge anybody in this point in time. I am not going to judge a person who's like, I want my 2nd grader to have a phone in her bag in case there's an emergency at school. I don't want her to take it out, but I want her to have a way to reach me if there's an emergency. I'm not judging anybody anymore. The fact that we're banning books and cell phones before we're banning assault weapons is ridiculous, okay? So I'm not going to judge. But yes, no child should be having unfettered access to social media or ChatGPT or anything else. Nonetheless, don't blame the victim. Freaking regulate these people. They're making billions of dollars. They shouldn't, if you know that you've got, AI is terrible for the environment, by the way. These AI data centers, it's not just like Google, okay? Educate yourself about some things. Even if you love ChatGPT, I don't use it. I don't have it. I don't have an account. It's not on my, I don't have it. I don't use it. I don't even have an account. I don't even know how it works intentionally. I don't like this crap. I don't like these messages that pop up. I opt out. Everywhere I can, I opt out. I don't want it. I like using my own brain. I know how to make my own grocery lists. I don't want it. But it is terrible for the environment. The AI data centers are killing the environment around them. Just please educate yourself. I'm not just educate yourself about it. But when it comes to what's happening with kids, teenagers, remember that your frontal lobe does not go fully online until you're 25 years old. These guys are allowing for unbelievable content, sexual in nature, to be happening with children as young as 8. 8. Just go take a look at what's going on. Go Google like meta AI, acceptable responses to young children. That'll get you where you need to be. Or Google Adam Raine, Raine. It's very, very sad what's happening. And yes, these people need to be regulated, but they don't care about us. And that's really what this is. This is not about red versus blue. This is about like these billionaires just taking what they want and keeping us distracted down. We're ants to them. And they're, for a lot of people not seeing it. So anyway, I love y'all. I'm here. I know it's really hard. I hear from people all the time who are like, thank you for saying these things. And like, I'm struggling so much. And sometimes I feel like I don't understand. I have friends that just seem to be going about their lives like, everything is la la la. I know I have those people too that I see. I know there are a lot of people who are not okay, who are really struggling and seeing what's happening and who are feeling heartbroken and devastated and who are scared and who are trying to show up in their communities. Don't feel like you're alone. You're not alone. If you need support, you know where to find me. And don't give up. Don't give up. Like, I genuinely still believe there are a lot more people who want this world to be kind than there are people who like are just looking out for number one, or who have gotten confused, like have just really gone down this weird spiral. Yeah, I still think there are a lot more people who want the world to be a kind and compassionate place, and who really, really wish Fred Rogers was still around. And, like Fred Rogers and Jane Goodall, like for me, they should have been running the world. Anyway, I love y'all. Talk to you soon.